So welcome back to Craziness of the World, all right, where we look at conspiracy theories, unexplained mysteries, and just crazy news that's happening throughout the world. So before we get to the madness, though, I need y'all to help me unplug some more people out of the matrix. And you do that by hitting the like button, then putting hashtag unplugged in the comment section. All right, and if you're new, subscribe. That's it. Let's go.
Over the years, many things have been discovered in the depths of secrecy long lost to time within Egypt. Pyramids, mummies, trophies, and more have all been uncovered, and some of these discoveries have left scientists and experts baffled at their condition, significance, and in some cases, downright weirdness. We'll explore many of these treasures and have a look at what's been found hidden within the sands of Egypt and time together. These are the 20 most incredible finds in Egypt that scare scientists. Number 20. New temple found in Egypt, Temple of Buto. Even the most excitable of ancient Egyptian enthusiasts might find it a tiny bit tricky to get their panties all in a bunch about this one, but there you go, we're telling you about it anyways. Lucky old you. This is the recent and yawn-worthy discovery of the remains of a colonnade hall beneath a temple site in Egypt. Apparently it does signify a few interesting things about the history of architecture, but otherwise, it's just a few columns in a pit next to an ancient temple. And while the site of the Temple of Buto is, in and of itself, allegedly an important site in the history of the region, there are no very cool or exciting news stories or particularly fascinating things that have been revealed. Shall we just move swiftly on to something a lot more silly? Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping.
I would do it.
Now it's time for the sweet topic. In a recent discovery that sent shockwaves throughout the scientific community, a profoundly disturbing mummy was unearthed in the depths of Egypt. This ancient relic has left experts perplexed and full of dread. The mummy's unsettling appearance, with contorted limbs and a hauntingly frozen expression, has struck fear into the hearts of even the most seasoned of scientists. Giving off an unexplainable aura of darkness, this mummy has become the subject of intense speculation and countless theory. Its unearthly presence and disturbing visage continues to send shivers down the spines of those who dare to study it, leaving scientists and experts grappling with the mysteries that lie within its ancient, terrifying form. As always, let us know your thoughts in the comments section down below using the hashtag #SweetTopic. Number 19. Egypt Sarcophagus, mystery black tomb opened in Alexandria. Back in 2018, archaeologists in Egypt found a super creepy and extremely mysterious black granite sarcophagus. It was a bit different from all the usual tomb stuff that they're always finding out there, and it really did a number on those set at the task of opening it all up. First of all, there was the standard fear of the curse. This pretty much goes without saying whenever a tomb is opened. You know, the curse of the mummy's tomb is still a legitimate...
I wonder, do they draw straws for that job? Because nah, they probably don't have to, because you'd be surprised on how many people would just do anything to be the first person to open up a tomb. Even they don't care nothing about the curse. You know what I mean? But I would just let them go do it and hang back, far back.
Fear for some people. And things were way creepier in ancient Egypt, and also opening a tomb is fraught with biohazards and grossness. So you probably get it, I'm sure. Anyways, once they got to cracking this big black coffin open, these lucky archaeologists were met with the most horrendous stench. Well, it was a tomb after all, so this shouldn't be such an enormous surprise. Before they opened it, they had rather hoped for the long-lost tomb of Alexander the Great, but what they found was much less exciting. It was 3 skeletons and a puddle of brown sewage water. Excuse me while I just vomit slightly. So although they don't believe that they released a curse as such, it is quite possible that they could have released some toxic fumes. Delicious. Number 8.
Is there any chance that that could be from the body, or just maybe a sewage pipe running through there, which could possibly be the case as well, leaked into the box some kind of way? I don't know. But is there a chance that that could have possibly come from the body? Y'all let me know.
18. Researchers shocked to find that Egyptian mummy was a pregnant woman. An Egyptian mummy that was transported from Egypt to Poland in the early 1800s has recently undergone some new testing by a team of Polish scientists, and what they discovered was believed to be the world's first pregnant mummy. There are tasteless jokes, but it's too heartbreaking to think of them. The mummy dates back to the 1st century BC and was, for many years anyways, believed to be the body of a male priest, but modern scientific stuff can poke around where it was not previously possible. Using radiological scanning, the scientists at the National Museum of Warsaw have discovered that the mummy was not only a woman, but that she was about 28 weeks pregnant when she died. It just kind of makes me feel sad though.
Same.
Number 17. Oldest tattoo found on 5,000-year-old Egyptian mummies. According to Egyptologists, it seems as though this mummified corpse may be sporting one of the earliest tattoos ever. Now, there are actually 2 mummies that have been dated from about 5,000 years ago that can be seen sporting some ink. The images that have been found on their skin are of a wild bull and a Barbary sheep. These are on the upper arm of the male mummy, and there are some S-shaped patterns on the upper arm and the shoulder of the female. Previously, the earliest known tattoos in this region were a full 1,000 years more recent, so this is a big discovery in the history of body art and changes the way that the practice is seen by archaeologists on the African continent completely. These particular mummies were actually found about 100 years ago, but it's only with the use of modern infrared technologies that the body art has been properly identified. So, this may only be the beginning of rewriting the history books on the subject. This discovery has already changed the date of the earliest known tattoos, but it's also established that it was not only women who had them, as was previously believed, and body modification was actually used by everyone. The oldest tattoo in Europe was found on Ötzi the Iceman, who is known to have had some vertical and horizontal lines tattooed on his body. They date to a similar era, but Ötzi is believed to be slightly older, whereas the Egyptian mummies' tattoos are figurative. Number 16. Egypt archaeologists make intriguing discovery in mysterious underwater opening. Sometimes being an archaeologist isn't just using a toothbrush to dust off bits of old broken pots. Ever so very occasionally, it can be a bit more like it looks in the Indiana Jones movies. Well, kind of. These archaeological types had to incorporate abseiling into their treasure hunting activities, which was all rather thrilling, I'm sure. They abseiled down a 20-foot deep pit that was full of water, and then found themselves in what they described as a mysterious underwater opening. This unusual place was discovered about 40 miles to the north of Aswan. The whole area had been a major quarry during ancient Egypt's 18th dynasty. Inside the place, they found an entrance that they believed may lead to somewhere else, and they also believed that it may be a tomb that had previously been concealed by the water. Inside, there were pieces of pottery and skeletons, and also a second opening, and that got everyone extra excited. The size of the tomb, as well as the lengths that had been taken to conceal it, meant that they had probably found something really interesting. They think that in the area beyond the second entrance, there may be hundreds of bodies. Oh, what a fun one.
Really?
Number 15.
Who going in
Ancient
there?
Egyptian board game of death identified by scientists. This is an ancient Egyptian board game called Senet. It was played all throughout society from about 5,000 years ago, until they got something more shiny and exciting about 2,500 years later. Anyways, after poking about into the game a little more, some Egypt experts now believe that they have figured out how and why it was played. It's known as the board game of death, which sounds rather less than enticing, to be honest, and
Did not see that coming. I actually thought it was about to teach us about a potentially new game that they were playing back then. But a game of death? Didn't see that coming.
according to these nerds, the game basically involved moving your pieces to the finish point on the board. They reckon that this was designed to depict the souls moving through the realm of the dead. Oh, how jolly indeed. Number 14. Mummified mother and child found in Egypt.
Like, that would be technically considered like the first kind of Ouija board, maybe?
Here we are back again in the area around Aswan in Egypt, where this time we're looking at some more shriveled up old bodies. I know we're so lucky, aren't we? This is the kind of horrific discovery of a mother and her child's mummified remains. These old bodies are believed to date all the way back to the Greco-Roman period, which began in 332 BC with the rule of Alexander the Great. They found this big tomb in a chamber that was cut from the rock, and it's believed to be from about 2,000 years ago. The tomb itself seems to have contained up to 30 different mummies, as well as a whole array of artifacts like vases and statuettes, as well as a stretcher that archaeologists say was likely used to transport the mummies into the tomb. The two mummies that are believed to be mother and child are presented in a superimposed position. This, apparently, is what indicated to the experts of their familial relationship. They were also found still covered by something known as painted cartonnage, which is created from pieces of linen or papyrus that have been glued together. Number 13. Restoration of Egypt's landmark temple leads to the unearthing of colossal pair of sphinxes. While it's beginning to seem as though the ground in Egypt is positively riddled with dried up old corpses, finding a sphinx is a more rare and perhaps exciting event. So finding two sphinxes, well, that must be like Christmas. While archaeological types were busy restoring the ancient Egyptian temple of Amenhotep III in the west of Luxor, they unearthed a whole bunch of fragments that came from a pair of massive limestone sphinxes. These ruddy great big things had been around 26 feet tall and are believed to have depicted the pharaoh Amenhotep III wearing a headpiece that was shaped like a mongoose, a fancy regal beard, and a big necklace. These were confirmed as being in his likeness when the limestone was restored to reveal the inscription that was deciphered as the beloved Amun-Re. They also happened upon a bunch of other cool ancient stuff like a load of statues and some bits of a temple that had art depicting a festival from ancient Egyptian times that was to celebrate the rule of the pharaoh after 30 years in power. Not many pharaohs actually made it that far, as most of them died much earlier than that. But Amenhotep III did apparently, and he was celebrated for it. Number 12. Egypt tomb. Sarcophagi buried for 2,500 years, unearthed in Saqqara. Just when you think you've seen all the mummies that could possibly be discovered, they only go and crack open a new one, along with 58 of her friends no less. That's right, in October of 2020, archaeologists in Egypt began opening up the ancient sarcophagi that had been discovered earlier that year at an excavation site in Saqqara, just to the south of Cairo. And despite all the curses and all that junk that could befall a person if they poke about on a mummy, most people just keep on opening the things up all willy-nilly. In fact, not only are people willing to open those coffins up, there are also plenty of people lining up to be there when they do. And that's what occurred when these chaps pried open the lid of this ancient death box that had remained sealed for 2,500 years. Does the phrase "rest in peace" not mean anything to these people? The first sarcophagus contained the mummified remains of a priest, which had apparently been sporting a rather fetching ensemble of an ornate burial cloth with a picture of the dead chap's face on it. How delightful! The mummy motherers were apparently thrilled to bits with the contents of these coffins and couldn't believe their good fortune. Let's just hope that lasts for them and no unfortunate accidents should transpire. Number 11. Queen Nefertiti's mummy discovered, according to expert. Well, it is easy to claim that you found something. It's all a bit more tricky to prove it. Back in early fall of 2022, a leading expert in Egyptology claimed that the mummy of Queen Nefertiti had finally been found. The mystery of the whereabouts of Nefertiti's final resting place had stumped archaeologists for all of time, so this expert and his gang began the search in earnest back in 2017. They claim that they have found her and that they will reveal where, how, and why that they believed it to be the famous beauty in due time, of course. All sounds the teeniest bit like a lot of old guff to me, but then what the heck do I know? I just work here and say a lot of words. It's also important to remember, though, that the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism is ever eager to promote all the cool stuff that's been found in the constantly probed tombs of this country, and they are forever seeking a way to revive their flagging tourist industry, and a new massive find like this would more than likely cause quite the stir in the ancient Egypt fans department. Not that I'm skeptical or anything, of course. Number 10. Discovery of 16 buried hands in Egypt. And now for something completely creepy. This is the sinister and pretty gruesome discovery of a whole heap of hands that were found dumped in pits dating back from around 3,600 years ago.
Now, we just had a story recently where they discovered teeth around. Now you got a burial site of hands. Like, what were they doing back then, or what did it mean? You know, it had to be some significance and meaning behind this to find teeth and then find hands.
So why in the world would there be a load of severed hands in a hole? That is a good question. So let's poke.
First thing comes to my mind is, though, people stealing. Collection of hands of people who've stole. That's what I would think.
Around and find out. Now, according to experts in this era, warriors had a very specific and fairly horrible habit of cutting off the right hands of their enemies. Not so much as you might imagine as trophies, although there's definitely an element of that in it, but rather they would exchange the hands for gold. And you know how much those ancient Egyptians loved the shiny stuff. The whole thing went down like this. When a fighter was successful in battle against an enemy, they would cut off their opponent's hands in order to remove their strength and to ensure that they would have no power for all the rest of eternity. You know how the ancient Egyptians felt about taking everything with them into the afterlife? Those hands were then exchanged for gold and then buried in these pits. How lovely.
Wow.
Number 9. Robot inside the Great Pyramid reveals a secret door. The Great Pyramid of Giza, which is also known as Khufu's Pyramid, is a symbol of the great and enduring mysterious appeal of ancient Egypt's past. This pyramid is one of the biggest and most obvious pieces of the puzzle, and yet it continues to harbor secrets, some of which are still being revealed today. It's recently been discovered that within the Great Pyramid of Giza, there lies a massive void, or hidden room if you will, and scientists have only just begun to develop the technologies that will allow them to actually see beneath the surface of the structure. Although Khufu's pyramid would be built in 2500 BC, our modern technology has only allowed us to probe so far inside this edifice. There are now scanners in use that are able to visualize and map out the actual shape of the interior, rather than just basing the map on what people had seen or could imagine was likely to be inside. So one of the things that they found while scanning the pyramid with this fancy new machine was a room or chamber that seemed to have been deliberately concealed. At 100 feet long, the space seems as though it may have had a purpose, but even with all the scanning machines in the world, we cannot yet figure out the meaning of ancient ideas. The scientists involved in the discovery are not calling the space a room as such, mostly because they have no idea what it was for, but rather they've taken to clinging to this area as being a void. There are some theories, many of which these scientists are hesitant to get too excited about, one of which is that this hidden room could be the place where the king's body was buried. But they say it's more likely to have served as an engineering purpose for the architects that were involved in the construction of the Great Pyramid themselves. But what do you think? Should they try to find a way to go and have a closer look? Let me know all about it in the comments section down below. Number 8. Archaeologists in Egypt discover a tunnel that may lead to the long-lost tomb of Cleopatra. Cleopatra may be the most famous of ancient Egyptian queens, but the whereabouts of her tomb continues to elude the archaeological world. However, new information about a possible location has come to light. Archaeologists have discovered a tunnel carved into the rock beneath an ancient Egyptian temple that they've suggested could lead to the tomb of Cleopatra herself. The tunnel is 4,800 feet long and runs beneath the Taposiris Magna Temple in the region of Alexandria. Some experts have floated the idea that this could actually be the tomb of Cleopatra and her lover, Mark Antony.
At least we haven't given up. At least we haven't given up, bro. Her trying to discover where she's located has been a tall task, bro. So I applaud them for not giving up, because it has been rough.
Itself has been described by those who have seen it as a miracle. This structure is apparently rather significant in engineering terms, although to call it a miracle may be rather overinflating it somewhat. It's approximately 6 feet high and bears a resemblance to another ancient tunnel on the Greek island of Samos. The one in Alexandria has thus far given up few secrets, but some pottery has been unearthed and some coins of Cleopatra and of the earlier ruler Alexander the Great, as well as various statues.
You see what all they had to go through? If y'all was dependent on me to find her, y'all wouldn't find her, because going through all of that, them tight, confined spaces too? No.
Number 7. Shabti dolls. The ancient Egyptians had a very powerful idea of what the afterlife would be like and what they would need in order to spend eternity there. They believed that the realm of the dead was an exact mirror image of this life on Earth, and that when a person died, they simply traveled from the earthly life to the eternal. So they figured that they would need some stuff with them to help navigate the afterlife, and naturally, the wealthy took a lot more with them. As they had in life, so too in death. All the life that the deceased had enjoyed on Earth would be represented in the realm of the death. Now, there was food, family, homes, etc. and so on, and people would be able to pursue their interests and such like just as they had in life. That also included, oddly enough, working. Yes, if you were a working person in life, you would continue to go to work in death. Sounds like hell more than eternity. On Earth, if an Egyptian could not work through illness or other reasons, even death, they could send someone else to take their place. So they made these shabti dolls to stand in their place for when they could not fulfill their duties. Shabti dolls were figurative funerary objects that would accompany the dead into the afterlife. These dolls were accompanied by a spell that stated what their function would be. The idea was that the spell would work to allow the shabti to come to life and then fulfill the role of the dead person, allowing the soul to go about the business of the afterlife.
So imagine that, right? You work your entire life, work all the way up into retirement, enjoy retirement, pass away, and then go to another life where you start again working. How would y'all feel about that? Would that feel like torture to y'all? Seriously.
Number 6. Vertebrae of
Wow.
98 million year old dinosaur is unearthed in Egypt. Back in 2016, an expedition to the Bahariya Oasis in Egypt's enormous western desert would unearth a fossil of a bit of a dinosaur that lived 98 million years ago. So, just a tiny bit older than all these mummies that we've been looking at today. The fossilized neck vertebrae had once belonged to a dinosaur that I can't pronounce, and that one lived during the Cretaceous period, which was around 145 to 66 million years ago. These types of dinosaurs were apparently very common in parts of what is now Europe and places that are now the continents of the southern hemisphere like Africa and South America. But it is the very first time that these species have been found in Egypt, so naturally that had all the paleontology people all hot and bothered under the collar with excitement. Number 5. Archaeologists discover 2,200-year-old Egyptian shipwreck in the Mediterranean Sea. This shipwreck is believed to have had a rather dramatic final few moments as a seafaring vessel, although I should imagine that most ships that are about to become wrecks feel at least a little bit dramatic as the event is taking place. Archaeologists discovered this ship that's believed to have sunk 2,200 years ago in the Mediterranean, and it's thought that the ship was hit by falling stone blocks as they tumbled from the Temple of Amun when it was in the process of being destroyed by an enormous earthquake. This ship would be found beneath the remains of the underwater city of Heraklion. This legendary lost city has its origins as far back as the 12th century BC, which is an incredibly long time. It's a really, really old thing and has many links to other great civilizations of the era, ancient Greece. Archaeologists believe that the city was lost to the sea as a result of a combination of earthquakes and tsunamis, as well as the issue that we share in our modern world, that being rising sea levels. The great buildings of Heraklion were likely taken by the waters when the city experienced a great flood at around the end of the 2nd century BC. Many structures would have collapsed under the pressure of the water, and huge areas of the city would be lost. It's believed that some residents may have stayed in the few remaining parts of the city during the Roman era and the early days of Arab rule, but it continued to disintegrate and was completely taken by the Mediterranean by the end of the 8th century AD.
I keep saying so much of our history is underwater, man. It's just uncanny to believe and see how much is down there, man. And it's a lot.
4. Koi Tomb and El Asasfi. This tomb would be discovered in the ancient necropolis of Saqqara, like so many things that we've seen from ancient Egypt. Now I know, you're probably saying, what? Another tomb? How utterly thrilling. But this, I assure you, is different. I know that you've heard that one before as well, but what they say was different about this one is that its walls were covered in some extraordinary and extremely useful, for history reasons, paintings. These images are, according to experts, a kind of archaeological architectural blueprint for the creation of the royal pyramids of the 5th dynasty. Whereas other parts of this tomb had been plundered, most notably the stones had been stolen and the sarcophagus of white limestone had been destroyed, these painted walls of this particular tomb had remained unusually intact and very bright and well preserved, as you can likely see. Number 3. 3,400-year-old pathway restored near Luxor. Here we have another, frankly, rather boring-sounding discovery in Egypt. I mean, honestly, the Egyptian Tourist Board may be scraping the bottom of the barrel if they're trying to coax visitors to their sites with a newly restored ancient walkway. It is, after all, a path, no mummies or death masks or tombs or anything. But anyhow, here we are, doing the work of promoting the treasures of ancient Egypt to try and coax visitors out of their travel phobia and back to look at the many wonders of this ancient land of pharaohs and camels. This 3,400-year-old walkway is called the Avenue of the Sphinxes, and it's basically a path that connects the temples of Karnak and Luxor. Now, I know it's utterly thrilling stuff, but in all fairness, it was discovered in the 1940s and has taken that many decades of painstaking restoration work in order to open it up to the public today. So maybe we should be a little bit more exciting? I mean, who could possibly say? Number 2. Extraordinary find of mummified baby girls that share DNA with King Tut. The practice of burying dead pharaohs along with their pets and sometimes even their servants was relatively common. The general idea of the tomb was that it should contain everything that the pharaoh would need in the next life. This meant absolutely everything. And for a time, that also included the servants of the dead pharaoh.
Again, why don't we do that anymore? It don't be nothing in the caskets but the body these days. They don't put no type of things for you. Like, we've really, I don't know. We've changed as far as how they used to view death and what they used to do and how they would send you off. I don't know. I just find it very interesting that we just don't take that much pride in sending people, or what's the way to say it, homegoing services as they did back then. They really took pride in it, made sure they had everything they needed. All of this type of stuff that went in either inside of it or was buried beside it, with it, different things they thought they may need in the next life. We don't do none of that no more. Now they just put you in a box and that's it. And they forget about you in a couple weeks. That's it.
Servants of the dead pharaoh, even if they were inconveniently not quite dead. This insane practice was eventually replaced with models of their servants. No doubt this idea was enthusiastically endorsed by servants everywhere who were still alive. So it should not have come as a huge surprise that the tomb of Tutankhamun contained mummies other than just the pharaoh himself. However, the fact that the mummies were tiny babies, that's a bit more startling. When the tomb would be uncovered in 1922, the pharaoh's two infant daughters were discovered inside. It does not appear to have been as sinister as it sounds. The children had died prior to their father's death. This super sad story is compounded by the fact that the babies have no known names. They're simply referred to as 317A and 317B. Number 1. Statue of Ka-Apur. Very few wooden statues survive from ancient Egypt, and there are obviously many more of their stone counterparts that have survived the rigors of time. But this one is remarkable on the account of its lasting detail and completeness. This is a statue made of a priest named Ka-Apur. It survived because it was made of very high-quality wood. This is cedar that was most probably imported from Lebanon, unlike many other wooden statues that were made of poor-quality local woods. This piece was originally carved in wood and then plastered and finally painted. It represents Ka-Apur in a striding pose with his left foot forward and holding a staff in his left hand. It's believed that he probably held a cylinder in his right hand, although that no longer remains. The eyes of the statue have been inlaid with black stone, calcite, and rock crystal, and they're outlined with copper. This shows the stature and likely the wealth of the man that it depicts.
In just a matter of a few days, 2 women were seriously injured in separate bison attacks while visiting national parks. On Saturday in North Dakota, a woman suffered injuries to her stomach area and foot when bison charged at her. Then on Monday, a bison gored a woman in Wyoming. Both were sent to hospitals to be treated for their injuries, and investigations into the attacks are ongoing. Joining us now with more insight into this is Yellowstone Wildlife Safari Guide Grant T. Johnson. Grant, wow, this sounds really scary, and both of these incidents are different, but I wonder, I mean, are people just getting too close to these animals, or is something else happening?
That's what I was going to ask. Were you in the bison's personal space? Were you invading their personal space? Because if so, then I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
But I wonder, I mean, are people just getting too close to these animals, or is something else happening here?
So overwhelmingly, the incidences that we see between bison and people are a result of people just getting too close to the animals. And right now we have a bit of a convergence of two big contributing factors. First, we have the beginning of the bison rut. This is the beginning of the bison mating season. So both the male and female bison have elevated levels of hormones. And that makes them a little bit more agitated, a little bit more competitive on the landscape. Secondly, July is...
Come on, ladies. Y'all know what it's like. Like, come on. Y'all stay away during these times.
The busiest month for people to be visiting the national parks. And so the risk of being attacked by a bison or any other animal is outrageously low. With this many people in the park, it's not surprising that this is the time of the year that these types of things happen.
Look, I'm going to ask the thing that I feel like everybody's probably thinking, which is one, like, it shouldn't be that hard to not go close to bison. Seems like a logical thing. And so my initial question, as I've seen these reports, is this like a social media thing? Is this people trying to take pictures of themselves? Why are people going so close to them based on your experience?
So I think it's a bit of a few factors. I think for sure social media has been a negative influence. People are trying to recreate photos they've seen or get a new photo that no one has ever seen. And doing risky behaviors is a way to get that done. Also, I think a lot of people do not have familiarity with real, authentic wildlife. And when they come into these areas, they think that they're essentially visiting a zoo. And this is not a zoo. These are national parks. These are true, wild, authentic wildernesses. And these animals are wild, and they're potentially dangerous if we push the limits with them.
What is your advice to people if they find themselves, we're looking at some scary footage there, of a bison charging at someone. So what happens if you're in that situation? What would you advise people to do to basically save themselves from being seriously injured or perhaps even killed?
So the Park Service is very clear on their rules that they have set forth, and these aren't just polite suggestions. This is the law in the national parks. If you're in your car, there's essentially no risk. As long as you're pulled off the side of the road, you can stop, you can enjoy the wildlife, you can take photos, enjoy the experience. If you're outside of your car, whether that's walking, hiking, or just standing on the side of the road, you need to stay certain safe distances away from the animals. Bears and wolves, that's 100 yards, and all of the other animals, including bison, is 25 yards. If you see the animal drastically changing their behavior because of your presence, you are too close, even if you're beyond those limits. So with bison, they are nice enough to give us warning signs that they are getting agitated. You will see this exaggerated head bobbing. You will see them kind of scratching and stomping at the ground. And most distinctly, you'll see their tail go up. If you see any of those factors happening, back up, increase the amount of space between you and the animal, and let other people know, too, that they're getting too close. You're not just putting yourself at danger. You're putting other people at danger, and you're putting the animals at danger.
Right.
Grant Johnson, look, let's be clear. National parks are a treasure. It is absolutely worth doing that in the summer, but listen to the guidelines, listen to the safety.
It's sad that you got to say that, but, you know, people be trying to get the perfect shot and angle with the cameras and stuff like that, and they're willing to take the risk. You shouldn't have to tell them that. You should know better. Stay back.
Thanks, Grant. We appreciate it, Ty.
Thank you very much.
Crime so bad in Washington state that business owners are installing electric fences around the property. Look at that.
Yo.
Alex Bacon is the owner of Aberg's Tools and Equipment Rental, and he joins me now. Alex, you've installed these fences. No, it's nothing to do with shoplifters. This is all about people just coming in the middle of the night and taking your stuff and going. Has it worked?
Yeah, it's well, thank you for having me, by the way. Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing. It's deterred numerous crimes previously that we had people breaking in, cutting big holes like on your screen there. And since installing this product here, we've had 0 break-ins, not one.
How much equipment did you lose before you put the fence in?
We were losing nightly. We would, for a little while here, we were losing thousands of dollars worth, not crazy amounts, but it was more of the fact of that they were cutting a hole in our fence wide open to everybody, which was a huge problem because you got to come in the middle of the night. You have to repair the fence. You can't leave it open like that. And at the end, they actually started stealing things like our vehicles, off-road utility vehicles, trailers. So it got bad at the end. At the beginning, it was petty stuff. Towards the end here, it really got bad.
Had you not installed...
Yeah, for you to install an electric fence, things had to get really, really bad, bro, for you to take it to that drastic of a measure. So I ain't mad at him. You got to do what you got to do to protect the way you feed your family, bro. But that's insane. He said nightly. Not this was happening ever so often. Nightly.
The fence. Would you have had to leave Tacoma?
We've got a large investment in the city of Tacoma, so it'd be very hard for us to just up and leave. But I probably would have had to move a bed in my office and start sleeping here at night.
Who pays for the electric fence?
We pay for it. It's part of our security. But previously, we were paying for camera monitoring and different closed-circuit camera systems. And so we found that this electric fence was just a much better option because it creates a perimeter security instead of just a camera security.
How unfortunate that it's come to this. Alex Bacon, it's a terrible thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a bummer, but it works. It's amazing product. So for us, we're sleeping easier at night. It's been really nice.
We love success. Alex Bacon, thanks very much for joining us. We appreciate it, sir.